Welcome to the MAHA Revolution. I'm Tony Lyons, president of MAHA Action, and I just want to welcome you all here. We've been getting really great numbers. We've had more than 8,000 people on each of our calls. We've had some tech problems, but it's generally going better and better each week. So the good news is that Secretary Kennedy and his whole team are making incredible progress. They're making sweeping, decisive reforms. And we're also seeing historic cultural changes. So the way people think about food, about big pharma, about big ag, big food, it's changing dramatically. And the bad news is that these companies have been lying to you, they've been poisoning you, and now they're getting desperate. And they're playing every dirty trick in the book. They're creating organizations that are going after us. They're paying influencers. They're working to make people afraid of change. And they know that we're making such incredible progress, and they're telling you that we're dangerous. And the fact is that the danger is to their profit streams, not to the people of this country. So, we want people to comprehend the importance of the midterms, that what happened is people voted for decisive change. They voted to challenge the status quo. And Bobby Kennedy and his whole team are giving that to us, to all of us. But we have to win the midterms if we're going to win this battle, if we're going to really complete the mission to make Americans healthy. So that's what's at stake here. We have a great lineup of something like 10 people today. And the first person is Dr. Oz, who's done an incredible job. We're so proud to be working with him and so proud to have him in the incredible position of power that he's in. Thanks for coming on. Dr. Oz, are you there? Okay, looks like we are having tech problems once again. Maybe that is a big pharmaceutical company issue, or maybe it's not. Anyway, Dr. Oz, I hope that you're coming on soon.
I'm here.
Great. Great to have you. Thanks a lot.
There we are. Well, I'm almost there. Go ahead. I'm boxed out. I'm boxed out in the video. You see me okay or not really?
I'm seeing Noah.
He's such a handsome guy, isn't he? He's my body double.
Definitely.
So we just came up from the press conference with Secretary Kennedy, Marty McCary, he was the commissioner of the FDA. And I thought, since it's breaking news, and you'll be reading all about it for the next 24 to 48 hours, I'd tell you a little bit about what the conference was about and what the defining features were. But to start off, let me take you back a little bit in time. The conference was about biosimilars. Most of you don't know what that is, but you will by the time we're done, because we spent a ton of money. About 50% of the branded drugs in America are biologics. But to tell the story, I want to go back to 1984 with the Hatch-Waxman Act that was put out with an intent by Congress to say, listen, you're making all these cool chemicals called pharmaceuticals, and sometimes when they're patents, which are 20 years in duration when they start the process, but of course takes years to get a drug developed. So whatever numbers of years it is that you actually can use these products with protection, let's just say a decade. Once you've actually innovated and got your money back, and now you invest that in future ideas, there should be some moment when, because the patent expires, the rule of law should allow insurgents to come in and compete. In 1984, Congress indicated its intent. It took a while, and initially there was a lot of fighting back and forth and hair pulling and scratching by the pharmaceutical industry, arguing that generics weren't as good as the branded products. But the country has now gotten comfortable, as has pharma, with the fact that there are generic products that work as well as branded products, should be used widely, and they are. 91% of all medications used in America are generic. But the evolution from chemicals to therapies that come out of cells, biologics, think Humira, a lot of these more complicated peptides, these larger molecules, they are incredibly effective at treating a whole slew of conditions, and they're going to grow in importance over time. So we need to get more serious about how we deal with the equivalent of those in the generic world, which are called biosimilars. So again, you have biologics, which are the equivalent of a brand name product. and they're the biosimilars, which are equivalent to the generics. And 15 years ago, there was a movement to allow these biosimilars to become more widely used. But there's been a fair amount of slowing down the process because there are additional studies required by the FDA for these compounds to be introduced. And today, Secretary McCary, and this has been talked about for many, many years, but today, finally, the Secretary, brave as he is, took a stance, got the entire agency on board, and issued a statement that we are going to remove, as a government, some of the additional barriers for these biologics to be used more widely. And by doing that, allow more insurgents, more novel, smaller companies to be able to produce products to compete with these famous brand name biologics and allow a competition price. And that's the goal, to be able to get us to a place where if you're out there looking for a medication for yourself, you should always be asking, is there a generic or biosimilar alternative? So we had 3 asks. The Secretary spoke beautifully, by the way. It's online. If you could check that, Marty is unbelievable in his comprehension of the process and his ability to get stuff done. I spoke about it, and I'm just giving you a brief summary. But the 3 asks we have are, we ask governors to look at their Medicaid portfolios and try to get the less expensive generic or biosimilar drugs to be funded. The second big ask was for the insurance plans to push folks to look at generic or biosimilar options when they're out there. You should know that on Monday, there was a huge announcement from a PBM, a middleman company called Cigna, that they're going to change their business model and stop doing the rebate model, which has been the most dominant way that these companies have been able to control the market. They're going to move to a more transparent approach. And finally, we're going to be able to, and this is the big ask I have of all of you, ask the American people to recognize this is happening and take advantage of this opportunity. When you go to a pharmacy, when you go to an online store, you should always be asking, is there a generic or biosimilar option? If you do that, enough people do that, that'll become the norm. And Trump RX, which there's a holding site now, if you go to trumprx.gov, that was also going to give you all the medications at the best price available, and it'll always show the generics and biosimilars. So that's a quick summary of what just went on downtown.
Sounds great. Thanks so much. So next up, we have Vani Hari, best-selling author, founder of Truvani, and somebody who's really exposed, more than almost anybody else that I can think of, toxins in our food. So thanks so much for coming on, Vani.
Thank you, Tony. I appreciate it. I'm so excited to be here. I just want to spend a few minutes talking about tomorrow. There's a fundamental piece of the puzzle, of the MAHA piece of the puzzle, that will hopefully be completed very soon. And that is Dr. Casey Means' confirmation hearing as Surgeon General. That's going to be taking place tomorrow at 11 o'clock. She's going to be doing it remotely. She's 40 weeks pregnant, about to become a mother. It's a beautiful time for her. And that in itself is so powerful. We are about to have someone leading this nation's health who understands firsthand the experience of motherhood and the responsibility, the care, the deep instinct to protect future generations. That kind of empathy and awareness has been missing, I feel like, from our nation's highest health office for so long. For decades, we've watched obesities, Alzheimer's, diabetes, mental illness skyrocket. And these conditions have worsened. Our life expectancy has dropped to the lowest in the developed world. There has been a complete track record of failure in improving American health. And now it's a real time for change. And it's a beautiful thing to watch what HHS has done in this powerhouse of a group. I remember the Fox News interview when I saw Dr. Oz and Dr. Marty McCary and Dr. Jay Bhattacharya and Secretary Kennedy all lined up. And I said, gosh, I just can't wait for Casey to be in that lineup. And what makes Dr. Means so extraordinary is that she understands why. She doesn't treat the symptoms. She focuses on the root causes. She left her residency program in the last hours because she realized she wasn't healing patients. They just kept coming back with more problems. And she saw a system that wasn't incentivized to look at what was truly wrong. And she made the courageous choice to step away from that system because she didn't want to be part of the one that was keeping Americans so sick. And she knows food is medicine, and that true health begins with understanding what's really making us one of the sickest nations on earth. And I think what's so beautiful about her too is she's very courageous. She's not afraid to take on the status quo, and she's all for crumbling the old establishment, and the need for real reform at the highest levels of our government. She's challenging big pharma and industrial complex, and is she's challenging the industries that have profited off of chronic illness for decades by looking at the root cause of why we are so sick. Not only has she had the best-selling book in the nation for the last year that has sold millions of copies and helped countless individuals on a personal level, she awoken a beast when she gave her testimony last September at the Senate roundtable, where she clearly articulated the problems of what we have today and how to solve them. I am very excited for her to take on this role as Surgeon General and bring a new level of communication to these ideas on how we can undo the mess that we've been in. And what you're going to see is obviously people start to attack her and her character. And the things that I've been hearing are a lot of things that are just completely laughable. They call her dangerous. They call her unqualified. And it's because they're scared of her. And they're very threatened by what she represents, which is real change and what we desperately need in this country. So as you see the confirmation hearing take place, and we're going to be sharing clips and sharing important moments from that. If there's something resonates with you, please spread the word about how amazing this individual is and what an opportunity we have to put someone in this position that can communicate very effectively the problems we have had in this country and how to solve them.
Thanks so much, Vonnie. Yeah, that's a great point that, when they call people dangerous and unqualified, it usually just means that they're a danger to the status quo. And that's what the public voted for. We all wanted real change. That's what we're getting. And, that's what Casey Means would clearly bring. So hope it all goes through smoothly. So next up, we have the rogue activist and toxicologist, Alexandra Munoz. She's done just incredible work, has been on here before. And welcome, Dr. Alexandra.
Thank you so much for having me, Tony. I'm here to talk about a very alarming issue that is coming up. Industry is trying to rewrite the rules at the EPA for TSCA. And if you don't know about TSCA, TSCA is the Toxic Substances Control Act, which regulates lots of chemicals that are on the market already and lots of new chemicals. And they're proposing a rule change for that's going to apply to all of these existing chemicals that haven't really been evaluated very much yet, that are in line to be evaluated. And this rule change is something that industry has requested over the years. They've asked for these specific changes that are now in this document. And when I went to the EPA last week with Moms Across America, we actually talked about this rule change with the people there and requested that they extend the deadline for comments on it. And they declined to do so. And so now we only have until November 7th to submit our comments. And it's incredibly important that we do, because this chemical inventory contains known carcinogens, known endocrine disrupting chemicals, things like formaldehyde and heavy metals. It contains phthalates and bisphenols. It contains forever chemicals. So chemicals that we are definitely watching, chemicals that we know impact people's health, that impact children and their development. This is a really serious list of chemicals here. And now the rule that governs the way that the EPA implements TSCA is being rewritten by industry. So they've written out the rule changes, and they're trying to make it so much easier to get these chemicals through without rigorous testing and without rigorous evaluations. They're looking at changing things things so that they can only look at certain types of uses of the chemical or certain exposure pathways, which would fragment the way that we're looking at it and make it so that when we're thinking about kids and the cumulative and the aggregate impact of these chemicals on kids, they wouldn't be able to see that. They wouldn't be able to capture it. And so they're going to let things go through that really shouldn't, or that need more regulations in place, and they're not going to have them if this rule goes through. So it's incredibly important right now that we let the EPA know that we are watching them. We're watching that they've taken the suggestions of industry to create this rule, and that we are very much opposed to it. So they've set up a portal through MAHA Action to make it easy to leave these comments about the rule change. And there'll be some notes there about things that you can say in order to communicate this. But essentially, we don't want them to change the rule. The rule that's already in place right now is a really great interpretation of TSCA statute. And that statute is designed to evaluate the full chemicals, to evaluate all of the uses and all of the exposure pathways so that people can be protected from the chemicals that they need to be protected from before they enter the market, before they're in all these products. And we're forced to do things like look for safe swaps, when really those chemicals should be banned or regulated beforehand. So this is a rule that impacts that and all the things downstream of that. And so it's so important that we take a minute and really let the EPA know that this is absolutely not in alignment with MAHA. It's not in alignment with where we're moving. And we need to get the word out to them about it. So that is the message.
Thanks so much. Yeah, I think it's really a critical part of what Bobby Kennedy has wanted to do from the start, which is to have radical transparency, so that companies can't lie to the American public. They can't lie to our, government, branches of government. They can't lie to our politicians, and it's just such an important thing. Next up, we have Kelly Ryerson. She's been on here before. She works at the, as a scientist and works with policymakers to address the liability shield that we're trying to fight, and also damage to our soil and to our bodies. Thanks so much for coming on again.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you so much, Dr. Munoz, for your work on this, because paging through this policy is extremely complicated, and she does such an excellent job with it. And one of the quotes that came from the EPA regarding this TSCA rule that we uncovered was, "We are the gatekeepers of new chemicals. We want to open the gate." That is really not MAHA at all, and particularly when we're talking about endocrine disruptors. To put this in perspective, so just this week, I had another friend reveal to me that she's struggling with infertility. This is a crisis in this country, and it's heartbreaking. And things like this, with these environmental endocrine disrupting insults, are what is keeping us in this place. 13.4% of women aged 15 to 49% in the U.S. had some form of impaired fertility, 11.4% of men. Shockingly, in adolescent and young adult males between 15 to 39, 20% now meet the clinical criteria for testosterone deficiency. It's a tremendous drop since 2000. And that is at least in part due to these endocrine disrupting chemicals that the EPA needs to be assessing for endocrine disruption. And then you look at this, always there's an industry solution to it. So now we're looking at the IVF market that's currently valued around $6 billion and is forecasted to reach $9 billion by 2033, which I think, if these rules like this become loosened, is going to be a lot larger of an industry than $9 billion. Of course, the MAHA message is, let's try and get to that root cause, which is exactly the kind of thing that Dr. Casey Means will bring to the table. And I'm really excited about her. So this rule is separate from pesticides, but we also know pesticides to be endocrine disruptors and carcinogens. Just this week, the Washington Post put out a comprehensive article exploring the exploding cancer rates in the youth in the Corn Belt. And it was funny because the title of this article was "The Mysterious Rise of Cancer Among Young Adults in the Corn Belt." These are states like Iowa, Nebraska, Illinois, Minnesota, Indiana, and Kansas. It's not surprising. The evidence is there. These chemicals that we're spraying are carcinogens on the farms: glyphosate, 2,4-D, paraquat, dicamba, atrazine. What are we doing to our rural communities by poisoning them like this? It is just wild. So while this community, this MAHA community, certainly knows that pesticides are no longer just an issue raised by the kumbaya kimchi eating people, although I just learned that Bobby carries around kimchi, I guess, to when he eats out to dinner. But it goes past that now. And one of the things that we're running into when we go and we visit congressional offices that are Republican is that they don't know that this is what their constituents want. They want more chemical regulation, less toxic chemicals. And so we ran a poll this week asking in Texas, alongside Make Texans Healthy Again, would you be more or less likely to vote for a Republican candidate who supports banning the use of synthetic pesticides and herbicides with documented risks to human health, including cancer and other illnesses? The results were unequivocal. 77.5% said they would be more likely to vote for a Republican candidate favoring such a ban. So this just shows a real switch in tide, that this is a bipartisan issue. This pesticide liability shield is something that Republicans and Democrats should be fighting. We can look now and see that as soon as government's back in, we're going to have two fronts continuing on the pesticide liability shield front. One being Section 453 that still is sitting in the spending bill. So that is one thing that's going to be coming up. The second is in the Farm Bill, which has proposed language around it that will prevent us from being able to sue chemical manufacturers when we get sick from their poisons. So we are going to be seeing that. And I hope that people aren't getting fatigue on the issue, because I know we've had so many calls to action, but really, really try and dig deeply and keep on calling your Congress, and particularly on this issue, the TSCA issue that Alexandra was just talking about. Submit your comments. They are the only thing that we have right now to push back. And when there's a call to action, call the Congress people, call those Republicans and tell them, we expect and your constituents want you to reject this liability shield. So thanks so much for having me on.
Kelly, yeah, definitely. Anybody watching this ought to just, write comments in, really think this through. These are companies that are really just doing things that are bad for your health, bad for the country, and bad for the midterms that we really need to win, and we need to show that we care and that we're really going to protect people's health in this country. Next up, we have Dr. Ben Carson. He's the former HUD secretary, author of many, many best-selling books, a neurosurgeon, founder of the American Cornerstone Institute, and one of the most prominent Black conservatives in the country. Thanks so much for coming on again.
Thanks, Tony. Thank you, everyone, for the comments that have been made. Showing a united front is going to be a tremendous help to the MAHA movement. Having many people coming from many different perspectives, all saying the same thing. Health is so vitally important, and most people don't really think about it until they don't have it. And working proactively to make sure that we do have it and that we continue the human flourishing is so important. And the policies need to be consistent with that. Just the fact that we have a lot of consumers who are looking at what's going on right now, looking at the fact that we're putting artificial sweeteners, artificial coloring, artificial flavor, artificial this, that, and the other in our foods. It's really one of the obvious differences between us and a lot of other nations, particularly a lot of other European industrialized nations who have much the same environment as we do. But their life expectancy is continuing to go up while ours is going down. And that would certainly point one toward some of the things that we are putting in the food. For several years, we've had to put up also with a lot of lies and obfuscations that really have disrupted the public trust. And of course, I think of COVID. Here we have a situation where Dr. Fauci et al. Said, don't need to wear a mask. Then, well, you do need to wear a mask. Maybe you need to wear two masks. or baths made out, but eventually admitting that there was no science behind any of what he was saying, and telling people that, if you get the shot, you can't transmit the disease. There are no real side effects, where, of course, we know that the side effects from COVID vaccinations far exceeded anything else in the last 30 years combined. We haven't been truthful about that. It's important for us to lend our voices to that, and not to just let it be swept under the rug, as is the case in so many cases. And then I think we need to educate people. When we talk about we don't need this kind of fat or this kind of fat is good, most people have no idea what we're talking about. We need to be educating people in addition to protesting what's going on. I think that's a big part of what MAHA is going to be doing. I, as a neurosurgeon, was mostly concentrating on surgical technique and statistics. But when you stop and think about it, it doesn't matter which area of medicine you're dealing with. It is affected by the condition of the patient. And we need to really spend a lot more time thinking about the condition of the patient. How do we get people into a good condition? It's not only food, it's also exercise. It's also remaining hydrated, which is not talked about nearly enough. Particularly the brain needs a lot of water. We don't talk about sleep, which is a critical part of a person's health. And just lifestyle in general, what a difference it makes. And I think we need to really make sure that we integrate that into the things that we're talking about. Transparency, accountability, all the things that are being ignored or have been ignored until now. I think it will make a huge difference when we are the ones collectively who talk about this. And President Trump is very much into this ideal of the MAHA movement, is very supportive. Agriculture Department as well as HHS working together with the FDA. We've never had that before. And the relationships are very cordial. So all of you are part of that, and I thank you.
Thanks so much, Dr. Carson. I mean, it's a great point that this is an incredible chance that we have to roll back 20 or 30 years of corruption, of food, drugs, medicine, pesticides that have been delivery mechanisms for toxins. That we can do better there. We can do better culturally. We can have people make better choices by getting real information on what's going to be good for them. So I think we should really fight hard to get out that message that we can do better, that this is a once in a lifetime chance, and that we need to make sure everybody recognizes that, and then make sure that we win in the midterms so that we can fight it through all the way for the next 2 years. So thanks so much for coming on. Next up, we have AJ Richards. He's the founder of From the Farm, a platform helping buy directly from local farmers and ranchers with a mission to rebuild trust in the food system. So, that's such an important point, that in all kinds of areas, we're really trying to rebuild trust after years of, trust getting lesser and lesser because so many lies have been told. So AJ is a great voice for farming, and we're really glad to have you on here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Tony. I appreciate the opportunity. What's great, and it's been said a couple of times, is for the first time in many decades, consumers are really paying attention to the source of their challenges, health challenges, and so forth. And that starts in the soil, in the forage that the animals are being fed, and then the animals that we then consume to edify our bodies. And for the first time, we're hearing consumers rally behind the message and getting to know, at the source what's causing this. And It does go back to, the 80s when antitrust laws were changed with our food supply that allowed for the capture of the beef industry. We now have 4 companies that control 85% of the meat we consume. And then the industry has followed that, which means maximizing efficiency, right? We got to put as much weight on these cows as we possibly can to move through a vast system to keep people fed, which is somewhat the lie. And what's been great, having had a chance to be in DC a few times now, is seeing the workings between interagencies. We've had meetings with Secretary Rollins and Secretary Kennedy, as well as members of other entities as well, that are all working together to solve this problem on a much larger scale. Now, one of the big things about consumers right now is they're worried about the price of food, but that's skewed because the price of potato chips per pound or a Snicker bars per pound is equal to or more than a price of ground beef. But the consumers have not been educated long enough to understand the long-term consequences of poor health choices. I mean, in our home, we buy local, we shake the hand that feeds us, but what that usually leads to is leftovers. That's a second meal. And so you actually get more than one serving out of those meals. I don't know if it's come across many people's feeds the last week. There's been a major shakeup in the beef world about importing beef from Argentina. But the reality is what we're importing from Argentina is so minuscule compared to where we're bringing it in from other countries, and we have for decades because of the corporate control of these beef packers. Bringing down food prices is not going to work if we actually affect the farmers and ranchers in the field by reducing what they can earn for that animal. It actually is controlled at the beef packer and grocery level. That's where your prices are controlled. We've lost more than 17,000 ranchers every year during Biden's administration. We're in a crisis when it comes to the food producers that we have remaining in our nation. It's genuinely a national security issue at this point. And so because of the awareness and because of people becoming woken up to their health and how it attaches to the food that they eat, we want to help educate consumers on how to get back to the source, how to shake the hand that feeds them. And when you do that, you can ask those producers what their processes are. You can get to know and build that personal relationship and start purchasing food that really is going to make an impact on you and your family's health long term. And if we look at that long term, you might pay a little bit more now, or you might think you're paying a little bit more now. But if you pay the farmer now, you're not going to pay pharma later, because food is health, food is nutrition, and that's where the shift has to happen. So understanding the complexity of all of this that's going on in our food system that has been set up and controlled by the big multinational corporations, which, by the way, 2 of the 4 entities that control our food, our beef industry, are Brazilian owned. So 2 of the primary 4 are not even American-based entities. That's a real national security issue. So working with Secretary of Agriculture and the other secretaries in DC, we're starting to see the groundwork being put into place so we can shift what we're doing and how we're sourcing our food so that we as a nation can become healthier and have that food stability that we're looking for. One thing I'll close on is right now being proposed in Congress, it's coming back around, as what's called mandatory country of origin labeling. Most people don't know that when you buy beef from the store, you don't actually know where it's coming from. We need the consumers to support, to call your congresspeople, rally behind them, and have them support mandatory country of origin labeling so we as consumers know where our food is coming from. We should have that right. We know where our shirts come from. We know where our electronics come from. Why don't we get to know where our beef supply comes from? We should have that right as a population.
Makes so much sense. So many people in this country care. I mean, in the most recent polling, more than 90% of the public is tired of processed foods, tired of foods that have really unhealthy things in them, and they have a right to know where their food comes from, and then of course what's in their food. So thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Tony.
Next up, we have Jillian Michaels. Most of you have probably heard of her. She is the host of Keeping It Real, the podcast, best-selling author, star of NBC's The Biggest Loser, and a really, well-known advocate for holistic health, for food, for fitness, for training. So thanks for all that you do, and thanks for coming on.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Really fun to be here. Not fun to follow so many of these incredible experts, but I'll do the best that I can. I think obviously the core mission is to help people live better quality lives. And we've all heard the terrifying statistics of infertility going up, cancer diagnoses going up, and people 18 to 49 at staggering number. Like, I'm not going to run you through it again. It's exceptionally scary. We have a problem, and that problem should not be a partisan one. That's one thing that I want to call out from the top. It's discouraging to see people attack health advice because it's coming from this administration. We've all seen pregnant women on TikTok taking Tylenol. It's exceptionally discouraging. So what I want to do with my few minutes here is tell people what they can do to take agency, because now that you have an administration that's working to fix what's broken, the revolving door between industry and our government agencies that mandate health or oversee it, so on and so forth, it's nice to be able to take that off of the plate of the average American. But what can you do to help yourself and to help the administration? Number one, we all know, use your common sense and your critical thinking when it comes to your food. I personally, I'm not going to advocate for some sort of fancy diet outside of use your common sense with your food choices. If you go to a fast food drive-through, it's not ideal, but the friggin' grilled chicken sandwich is probably going to be better than adding a large fries, getting a burger, and adding a soda. So work to utilize your common sense to eat less, make better food choices. I think I'd be hard pressed to find any person on the street and say, hey, what's going to be better for me? Water or a soda? We all know this. So as much as it's important to educate people, I think the basics, the big rocks, the heavy lifting, we know and we can take care of. Exercise, number one form of preventative medicine. And I get it. Maybe you're a beginner. Maybe you're intimidated. Maybe you have injuries. But what can you do that has literally no barrier to entry? Walk, have a step goal, get a walking pad for a few $100. If it's cold outside and you're watching something like this and you can walk while you listen or walk while you watch your favorite show or while you answer emails. I have one and I love it. What can you do as we're sitting here talking about all of these terrifying chemicals in our water and in our air and in our food and our hygiene products and this and that and the other? You could do a few things that will have a big impact. Get an air purifier, right? Get a water purifier, get a reverse osmosis filter, green your products in the home. A lot of this stuff doesn't cost more. It actually costs less over time. It's a small investment. And in my industry, it's well known that the number one cause of bankruptcy is sickness. So this small investment now is going to have an exponential benefit to you financially down the road, not just in your quality of life. So, what can we do with regard to policy? I think a few things. Be aware of what's going on. And as so many of us, and I myself am guilty of this, get caught up in fighting culture wars about biological men and women's sports. We get distracted from the things that what I like to think of as the uniparty is passing behind our back, like giving big ag complete immunity for things like glyphosate. And no one's paying attention to that. That is an average American. And these are things that are going to dramatically impact our well-being. So if you can do your part, as mentioned, and reach out to your representatives and tell them that you're paying attention and tell them what you want to see them voting on or voting for, it's going to go a really long way with helping this administration. And I see I have about 30 seconds left. I would say last but not least, again, use your common sense and investigate everything. The smears on the people involved in this administration have been so absurd. Newsweek actually printed that Kennedy eats dogs. Pay attention, do your homework. Don't take things at face value. I don't care where you heard it or who you heard it from. You do have to take some agency and do your own homework before buying into any narrative of any kind.
Thanks so much. That was really great. And it's such a good point that that the key thing is for people to use common sense, for them to use critical thinking. We all know that whole foods are better than processed foods. we're starting to learn once again that cooking with butter is probably a hell of a lot better than cooking with seed oils. And we're kind of learning that policy changes are only going to go so far, that we should, yes, really push our, politicians to do a better job, to vote for things that really help us. But at the same time, we have a lot of power to make better choices. And that's what we all ought to really focus on, what we can do to make our own lives better. So thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Next up, we have Dr. Eric Berg, also known as the Knowledge Doctor. He focuses on nutrition, mental health, health generally. But he's been a big part of the MAHA movement, has done so much hard work, and we're just grateful to have him be part of our team.
Thanks so much, Tony. I appreciate it. I wanted to just touch on some interesting data on the ultra-processed food line. I recently did a video on it, and I had this epiphany. I was like looking at all these ingredients, and then something just popped out and slapped me in the face. And that was there's a underlying intention behind every single ultra-processed ingredient that makes it ultra-processed ingredients. And that is the intention to hook you, because they're engineered very specifically that you cannot just eat one, right? Like my favorite, where I used to live on in college, anything cheese, crunchy type things, right? You have the mouthfeel, the texture in the mouth. You have the MSG, the flavor enhancers. You have the 200 different flavor chemicals that just explode in your mind. You have the blood sugar that comes up and spikes and goes down and makes you hungry, even though you're not really hungry. You just need something to eat that's sweet. And then you have also, the inability to tap into your own fat because it's so high in sugar. So then you are dependent on the next, meal. You just can't go along without eating certain things. So the relationship to how much of that causes chronic disease, from my viewpoint, is literally probably 80 to 85 to 90% as far as ultra-processed food calories, the causation to chronic illness. So then it kind of leads to the companies that make these ingredients and how the junk food industry and how they influence influencers to kind of push their products. Unfortunately, right now, as you all are aware, the influence of influencers is huge. It's the new trust economy. And so people trust influencers. A lot of them, unfortunately, are being paid by big pharma as well. But and last week I talked about how much. It's like way more than you think. It's more than $1,000 a post. It could be anywhere between $10,000 to $50,000 to $100,000, even more money per post, depending on how many views or how many subscribers you have. So there's huge money involved with that. And unfortunately, dietitians are doing this as well. And dietitians are the people that are supposed to be helping us get healthy. And these are trusted people that people go to. Unfortunately, the statistic is only 5% of them disclose that they're being sponsored or partnering with some of these companies. So you really don't know by looking at the sponsor, but you can kind of know just by what they are talking about, especially right now. They're defending seed oils. That's the big mantra. You probably see that over and over and over again. So you can pretty much observe the obvious. And then you have the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics group, which is actually overall the dietitians. Probably one of the most captured groups out there. I mean, they got paid millions of dollars from the junk food industry, the pesticide industry, the big pharma. But I recently found out they also invest, they have stocks in the junk food industry and big pharma of the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars. So here's an organization that's supposed to be trusted, and yet they're getting funding and they're investing in the junk food companies. So it's mind-blowing. So what you're seeing out there from dietitians is a watering down of the junk food. Like there's no bad food. It's all just in moderation. Portion control. We shouldn't discriminate against sugar. Just spread it out through the day. So they're really toning it down and watering down the message, and putting the responsibility on you, not the junk food industry. And you just need to count your calories more. You just have to eat less. Well, you can't just eat less because these are engineered to make us highly addicted. And I was the poster child for addiction to junk food. Anyway, I wanted to bring up that some interesting connections, and that's all I have for today. Over to you.
Thanks so much, Dr. Berg. Yeah, it's a great point that that it's so easy for us to be tricked because these foods that we eat, they are engineered to hook us and to get us to keep eating more and more and more. So the point is, how do we use common sense? How do we use our critical thinking, like Jillian said before, to make better choices, to read labels, and to recognize what's been happening to us? Next up, we have Dr. Robert Malone. He's a frequent guest and always has a lot of fascinating things to say. So thanks so much for coming on again.
Thanks to you, Tony, and hello, everyone again. It's been another busy week of travel just back from the Netherlands, where once again, they are hungry to learn anything about what we're doing here in the States. And they're doing a great job developing data from their own national databases that clearly demonstrate that the stories that we've been told by corporate media and by the old administration regarding the COVID products were falsehoods. And I think that the tide is really turning on that. Now, one thing I want to mention is that we're having a recent rash of articles coming out from the likes of The Guardian, MedPage Today, and all of the usual actors that are speaking about how turbulent everything is under Secretary Kennedy. We have a new set of issues that have come out because one of the staff at BARDA has been let go, and lots of accusations flying there. But what I see from where I sit is that Secretary Kennedy and his associates are gradually working through and building a tighter and tighter team. We're seeing this all the time now here in Tony's group at MAHA Action with the various people that are coming on as guests. Obviously, Dr. Oz is knocking it out of the park, as are the other key team members. But we continue to have this chatter coming from the political class and from the detractors saying that this is all chaos, that Secretary Kennedy doesn't know what he's doing, that he's being retaliatory. What's happening at the CDC that so many of them are focused on is that, yes, there have been significant layoffs. There's also been the furlough. But under Secretary Kennedy and the other leadership, a lot of the folks that have been so egregiously biased in their advocacy for various products and their unwillingness to consider anything other than advancing and essentially strongly recommending these products all across the nation, they're having opportunities to find new employment. And the secretary is reorganizing CDC, and this process is going to continue to go on. I'm surprised that we have these government employees that are so willing to backbite, and I'm sure Tony is going to have many that are asking him whether they can write tell-all books. But in the midst of all this, what I see on the front lines is increasing organization, focus, purpose, productivity coming out of all of these agencies. Remember, it really hasn't been that long, and we're talking about functionally a hostile takeover of the federal government by people that really want to change a lot of these practices that have been so dysfunctional over the years. So don't be discouraged by the media once again. Remember that this is a normal process, this kind of turbulence early in a administration where you have solid leadership like Secretary Kennedy and his close associates, including his deputy chief of staff, that are gradually working through the issues of personnel, bringing together teams to function more productively, and selecting the right people for the right job. So I'll see some of you in Las Vegas. Out in Utah, in Salt Lake for the Brownstone Conference. And then it's off to Rome for another MAHA-focused group that's very interested in what they're doing here in the States and want to talk about all the progress we've made, particularly on the COVID vaccines. Thanks for your time. Thanks for the opportunity to participate, and keep the faith.
Thanks so much. And thanks for all the great work that you're doing. And thanks for really putting in perspective that when you're trying to change the status quo, we need open-minded people. We need people who believe in real science, not the corporate corrupt science that got us here. So, once again, when people say that these changes are dangerous, that it looks chaotic, that Bobby Kennedy is a dangerous character, what they're really saying is that they want the world to stay the same. But we know that the status quo hasn't been good, that these people have caused public health to really plummet, to be the worst, to have the worst outcomes of any of the 30 industrialized countries. So we can do better, and we need a group of people who are going to help us do better. Next up, we have Dr. Aseem Malhotra. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks, Tony. So just following on from what Tony's very eloquently articulated, the issue that we're dealing with really around chronic disease is publicity bias and how it shapes the narrative. And one of the things that I've been doing and other independent scientists have been doing is trying to look at what does a totality of evidence say on a particular topic related to health, which is free from commercial influence. So as one of the major topics that we have been discussing for a long time has been around diet. Let me give you some perspective on that first and foremost. So according to the Lancet Global Burden of Disease reports, poor diet now is responsible for more disease and death globally than physical inactivity, smoking, and alcohol combined. Therefore, changing the diet and getting the diet right on a population level, individual level, is going to be probably one of the most important ways of improving chronic disease. So where have we gone wrong on this? And one of the things that I've done over the last 15 years and published in medical journals is really address this issue of saturated fat and cholesterol. In fact, the dietary guidelines changed in the US in 1977 and 1981 in the UK, really pushing a low-fat diet message. And that also simultaneously increased the consumption of seed oils. So what has that done? Well, the original evidence on which that was based was really to curb heart disease. That's where all these dietary guidelines change. And I'm a cardiologist, I'm a researcher, I'm a practicing physician. And when you look at the totality of evidence, first and foremost, eating saturated fat from foods like red meat and butter and cheese does not increase the risk of heart disease. Now, some people who are hearing this might be wondering, how is that possible that it cannot increase the risk of heart disease? Because we know that saturated fat does increase your total and LDL cholesterol. So if it does increase LDL cholesterol, but the overall evidence from systematic reviews, from observational studies, from randomized controlled trials where we even curb the consumption of saturated fat doesn't improve outcomes, that may suggest that LDL cholesterol isn't a major issue, at the very least. And actually, that's true. If you look at the evidence on the relationship between LDL cholesterol and heart disease, it's only really there in a strong association in people with very, very high levels of LDL, at least over 300 in many cases, which is usually related to a condition called familial hyperlipidemia. But certainly for 95, 99% of the population, LDL cholesterol independently is not a major risk factor for heart disease and preventing heart attacks. That is a dogma, that is a mantra amongst doctors, medical students, cardiologists, lipid specialists, that the lower your LDL cholesterol, the less likely you are to suffer a heart attack. And I and two cardiologists actually did a systematic review published in BMJ Evidence-Based Medicine in 2021 to answer this question, looking at drug trials specifically, using statin drugs, using new injectable cholesterol-lowering medications, to see whether there was a relationship in those trials with lowering LDL and preventing heart attacks. And we found there was no clear correlation. So this essentially, again, is how people have been misled. The fear of cholesterol is a multi-billion-dollar, probably trillion-dollar industry. And of course, then adding on to that are the mass prescription of statins, prescribed between 200 million and 1 billion people worldwide. Probably at least 30 to 50 million Americans are taking statins. And the statins do have a benefit, but they are marginal. The benefits are not because they lower cholesterol. They are there because they have anti-inflammatory and anti-clotting benefits. And just to give you perspective here, because this is where informed consent really isn't happening on a mass scale, is that if you look on a population level from industry-sponsored randomized controlled trials, where the data has never been independently verified, but if you just take that as gospel truth, over a 5-year period, in the highest risk groups, people who've had heart attacks taking statins, the benefit, the median increase in life expectancy over a 5-year period is just over 4 days. And when you add to that the fact that within 2 or 3 years of taking statins, up to 50% of people will stop taking them because they get side effects that interfere with the quality of life, muscle pain, disturbance, fatigue, then you can understand why on a population level, the mass prescription of statins, which by the way is probably our most effective cardiovascular drug. So just give you that perspective right now. It's so marginal at best in people that tolerate the statin, has not had a significant impact on a population level. So what should we be focusing on? When you break down the data, I know that many people in this space are aware of it. I think Dr. Eric Berg has talked about this at length. Insulin resistance is the primary driver of heart disease. How do you combat insulin resistance? Okay, this is measured by metabolic health. Only 7% of adult Americans have optimal metabolic health. That means their blood pressure is completely normal. They're not pre-diabetic. They have normal triglycerides and HDL as part of the cholesterol profile, and they have a normal waist circumference. So they're the 5 markers, okay? How do you improve those? And actually, what we find from data, from our own clinical experience, very rapidly, you can improve insulin resistance and reduce your risk of a heart attack. And insulin resistance isn't just about heart disease. It's also probably the second most important driver after smoking of cancer. It is probably the leading cause of Alzheimer's as well, is that if we target insulin resistance, we will have a massive impact on chronic disease burden in a very short space of time, because we see that in individuals even within a few weeks. What is the most effective approach? It is essentially a diet that is devoid of ultra-processed foods and low quality or refined carbohydrates. And of the components of the diet from the best available evidence that are likely to be anti-inflammatory and beneficial for your heart are components of the traditional Mediterranean diet, such as extra virgin olive oil, oily fish, nuts and seeds, lots of non-starchy vegetables, low sugar fruits. This should be the default diet. So the dietary guidelines need to change. In my view, the dietary guidelines that have existed for the last 5 decades have actually been the primary driver, in my view, of the chronic disease pandemic. And I know there are discussions going on in HHS with Secretary Kennedy and other people that are trying to make this happen. The evidence is very clear. Saturated fat is not a driver of heart disease. Lowering cholesterol is probably a complete waste of time. And in fact, the older you get, if you're over 60, the higher cholesterol, the longer you live. It's time for us to put the evidence into practice. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Those are just great points. And what's been fascinating to me is that so many people, when they write anti-MAHA hit pieces in their newspapers or in their blogs, they're always trying to say that we're anti-science. And then there are people like you who are, sort of fly in the face of that narrative, that you're such an acclaimed doctor who's done such incredible research, that, we've had Dr. Oz on here. We've had doctors really from all around the world, Dr. Ben Carson, doctors who trained at Columbia, at Harvard, researchers, just all kinds of people, toxicologists. I mean, this is what real science is. And so it's not anti-science to disagree. It's pro-science. That's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to push it. We're supposed to stand on the shoulders of giants. And that's what you're doing. And that's what so many of the other people who have come on today and in past weeks are doing. And I'm just proud to be part of that. So thanks so much for the work that you've been doing.
Thank you, Tony.
So we are still waiting now for Russell Brand, and we think he's going to come on in about a minute or two. So let's just take a minute to kind of look at things that we learned today. So one of the things is that Dr. Oz came on and he told us that, we're looking to governors and that we really want governors to look at Medicaid, and we want insurance companies to look at generics. We want consumers to go into pharmacies and ask for generics, because that's part of the way the world changes. And that was one of the points that I was making before, that we need cultural changes, that cultural changes really change the world, and that you can't count on regulation. What you want more than regulation is an end to corruption, an end to incentives that push us towards products that are actually unhealthy. And then we want to use things like Dr. Berg and Jillian Michael said, which is common sense, critical thinking, so that you can make better choices. And then we also need things like what Bobby Kennedy keeps mentioning, which is we need radical transparency. So if you have radical transparency, you can then get the information that is then the building block of information that you can use to make better decisions. And that's what I think we should all want. And we should want mostly the government to get out of the way and, not to give bad incentives, not to give liability shields for anything. I mean, the free market does a better job. And we've seen that time after time, that if people have to pay for the consequences of doing damage to the citizens of this country, they should have to pay for that. And if they do, then other companies come along that are doing a better job, that are doing better research, that are creating cutting edge products that actually help people. And then people know the truth, they see the products that work better, and they choose those. So that's what I think we should all hope for. So let me just check one more time to see if Russell is going to join us. And if not, we will wind up for the day. Looks like we are not able to track him down. So, let me just say thanks so much for coming on these calls. What I really want is actually he is on, but let me just finish this thought. And that is that what we really want is for every one of you to think about all of these things and then to take the emails that come in and amplify as much as you can. Amplify, amplify, amplify. We want these messages to get out to millions and millions of people. And the problem is that we have a corrupt media, that we have a group of mostly corrupt companies that work with the media to tell you things are safe when they're actually harmful. So, these are battles we can win, but, these are battles that we have to all collectively come together and keep on fighting. So we do actually have Russell Brand now, and he is here with a close friend of his, Dr. Jerome Poupel, and he's going to tell you all about him.
Tony, thank you very much for including me in today's call, and I'm very excited to introduce my friend Dr. Jerome Poupel. Forgive that special effect, but I think it will be ultimately beneficial that we flip things. We've been talking for a long while, Jerome and I, about in a sense different approaches to health and well-being. In particular, where Jerome has been extraordinarily beneficial to me is ensuring that we're able to take a cogent and eloquent approach to what are these days known as alternative therapies, but perhaps in a more sane world would have always been known as holistic, aligned, and sensible therapeutics, perhaps prior to the capture of medicine by the bought and paid for pharmaceutical industry. Jerome, could you tell us a little bit, given the nature of this call, that it's for MAHA activism, and on the call regularly are people like Gary Brecka and Dr. Eric Berg and Dr. Oz, and of course the entire movement is built around Secretary Kennedy. In particular, where you think the pharmaceutical industry around vaccine programs have been irresponsible, and what you do in your work as a chiropractor and kinesiologist that reverses and remedies some of the detrimental impact of the medicinal approach of the pharmaceutical industry, in particular with regard to vaccines.
Well, thank you for having me, Russell. So I think I was born in the 70s in France, and probably when I was a kid, I had maybe 6 or 7 jabs, vaccines, and that was it, in my era. And I think the dosage of aluminium and mercury were much lower in those days. And it was not, 70 vaccine or 50 vaccines. So there's been a huge change since 1986, as you all know. And I think so. The issue is there from the start. That there's been a dysregulation in 1986, and then things have changed worldwide, even in Europe. And so it's more not about anti-vaccine, but it's more about how many vaccines kids get, and the vaccine fillers or adjuvants like polysorbate 80 or polyethyl glycol, or other chemicals or formaldehyde mostly that I found in patients that react traumatically sometimes, like an allergic response. And so you have to be careful of those things. And it happens, by the lottery effort, because, how many vaccines you get, it's always about the statistics, how many, at some stage, one day you get affected. And obviously there are many more factors. So the chiropractic profession and kinesiologists in the world have many ways trying to help over the years people that suffered from those things with their own methods, trying to alleviate those reactions, not saying curing or treating. And I think I could speak for the whole world of chiropractic profession and kinesiologists working that way, or naturopaths. But there's much more to it, I think, because there are inherited disease programs, I think, in utero that are part of the big picture. And like German measles or epizoster could be trapped into a program transmitted through ancestors. And scarlatina, for example. And people don't have that disease, but they're from the uterus or the placenta or before, there is a memory of those things, and the immune system have reacted to them. And so it's a combination of in utero and placenta memory, or drugs that happen, like say Pitocin, which is induced labor drug, could be reacting to the baby or the child not sleeping well or having problems. And so speech delay, problem in the nervous system comes from inherited programming, I call it, in the electromagnetic spectrum. And the nervous system and the immune system had reacted, and the glutathione pathway could be blocked. So even though you could give detoxification remedies in the physical world, in the chemical world of medicine or nutrition, the blockage has occurred above it. And the nervous system has kind of created an email, a programming of it. So that's what I want to say, and those things could be addressed with some advanced kinesiology protocol.
Well done, Jerome. Thank you very much. Now, what I'm excited about is the opportunity is, I know that many of you, I hear that, are focused on the political, the significance of the midterms and the necessity for ensuring that we act appropriately to support Bobby and candidates that are in general supportive of Secretary Kennedy. What I wanted to make an appeal for personally is that if any of you would be interested in talking to Dr. Jerome further, please get in touch with me or Tony in the chat, because what I believe is that, as I've said before on this call, we have a unique opportunity now to discuss and even popularize methods and ideas that under previous administrations would not even be discussed. And I believe that Jerome can make a significant contribution, in particular when it comes to vaccine injury and the broader harms caused by the negligence and sometimes even malfeasance of the pharmaceutical industry. Some of you will be aware that my son was born with a congenital heart condition, and Dr. Jerome has been hugely impactful and influential, and he's helped, I know personally, a good number of people with complex cases of autism and other matters that some people believe are connected to vaccine injuries. I wanted to take this opportunity to make the introduction. Jerome, thank you for coming on. All of you, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks so much, Russell. Thanks so much, both of you. Really, really great to have you on. Russell, thanks so much for coming on time after time, for coming to our parties, and for just being a part of this incredible movement, which I think is just so critical to the future of mankind.
Thank you. See you
soon. So to wind up, I just want to state, and I've said it before, that I really believe that we have to have President Trump's back. We have to have Secretary Kennedy's back. But President Trump has really gone out on a limb to support the MAHA movement. He's been fighting corruption. He's given us this incredible opportunity. He's given us Secretary Kennedy, as a generational opportunity to make this country healthier once again. That we have spent so much money making our people so sick. And, this is just a time that we need to take advantage of. And so I think that this is going to go all the way through to the midterms. but we need this mission to be completed. We can't have Secretary Kennedy, we can't have President Trump going through congressional hearings for months and months and months. We need to give real change a chance. We need to give real science, not corrupt science, a chance. And that requires all of us to push forward, to help with the midterms, to help on social media, to get our messages out, to fight against the mainstream media lies and all of the corruption that has led us to this incredibly poor health that we've been in. So I'm just going to end by saying, we have an incredible Substack called the MAHA Report. And I just want you all to read that. We have great writers on it. We're covering all of the MAHA problems, issues, and we really want you to read that. It's the MAHA Report on Substack. And then also go to mahaaction.com. And thanks so much. Next week, we're going to have a whole new lineup of just some incredible people. And we'll send out a very long email that will have just incredible assets that we hope you will all repost. Thanks a lot and have a great day.
America's children are sick and moms have been betrayed. The time for empty promises, long past. Now is a time for action. MAHA is the most powerful force of collective action in generations. The grassroots power of moms and activists has created an army of health warriors with more reach than all mainstream media combined. Together, we can end the chronic disease epidemic. MAHA's influence is reaching millions. It's reaching Congress. And that energy, these chain reactions, are working.
How about Operation Stork Speed?
Dozens of food companies removing toxic ingredients.
I plan to lead by example.
MAHA is now.
We're talking about how to change the culture.
The American people want America healthy again.
It is a renaissance moment in health in America.
For health, freedom, and the truth. Join us at MAHA Action.